Going back to music and the work that you do at Unite Asia, how would you introduce someone to the Asian hardcore and punk scene who has never listened to it before? Like, if you had to create a starter pack for someone to get into this scene, to fall in love with it, what three artists or albums should our audience listen to?
Wow. Are you talking like current bands? I
Like,
mean,
if you had to just construct sort of like, okay, let's say this is someone who listens only to the top 100, someone who listens primarily to, the ones who are like, I just turn on the radio, whatever's good is good, someone who has just no understanding of this scene. Like, what would be a good introduction to the scene? It could be new, it could be old, whatever you think is probably the best.
wow, that's awesome. That's a great question. I mean, I think it would be super difficult to answer that question because of the history of this continent and how different the countries are,
Mm.
from everyone. I mean, there's certain countries like the Philippines have had punk rock and hardcore since the 80s or
Wow.
late 70s. Yeah. It goes way back in the Philippines. Singapore too goes back decades. So it's really hard to say like what it'd be easier if I'm just like, what are my top bands currently? You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I think honestly, how I would answer that question is that when it comes to a lot of heavy music that comes out of Asia, what I've noticed is a lot of people are especially from the US or from Europe or whatever, are just like, oh, Asian bands, how come you guys sound like you're from New York or LA and blah 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 blah? And I'm like, what did you think we sounded like? Did you think we had like a sitar out, like some tablas? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's got that exotic vibe still. It seems like I don't know if it is true still like that, but it does seem like they're like, oh, you're from Beijing. I was hoping I would hear more herbal when you're like, dude, come on. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of us are like trying to break away from the sounds that we hear every day. And those are the sounds we already hear every day. Why would we put that in? You know what I mean? But so I think that would be like the first aha would be people would be like, oh wow, it's a lot similar to what we hear over here than we thought. You know what I mean? So like I think like off the top of my head, like one of my favorite hardcore bands that's released something recently, actually not recently, but recent band's called Straightforward from Singapore. I mean, that would be like the go-to record that I would show people. Like it's a band that's got a little bit more like a New York hardcore kind of vibe. Lyrically they're great too. Live they're phenomenal, but they come from a community that is really supportive of their local bands, So like Singapore really, they give it. Foreign bands, they're all like, if you watch the Power Trip video from your neck of the woods, the Power Trip rolled through Asia, and Singapore lost their minds for Power Trip. But then if you see them for all the local bands, they're giving the same amount of love and affection to both local bands and foreign bands. And to me, that's always something really special about the Southeast Asian scene, more so than Hong Kong or other places that I've seen, where they really understand that without your local scene and without nurturing and supporting your local bands, like, you got nothing, So I mean, I think in terms of bands, it would be hard to say. Like, I would put Straightforward would be up there on top. This band called Evocation from Hong Kong, I would put there up on top because they actually do what a lot of people would hope bands do. Like, they do actually add a lot of Chinese elements, a lot of Asian elements into their music. And it's so much so like they add a lot of like quite almost like, I would say, like haunted imagery, because they're a death metal band, like with some black metal elements in it, and they add so many of these great like spooky Chinese like cemetery and funeral music into it. It's really freaking cool. Then there's another band from Singapore also called Rudra, very similar to Evocation too. They add a lot of these Indian elements to their music, but you can see with Evocation and Rudra that they're very much still a metal band, a death metal band with all those elements in there too. So those are some of the few bands I think I would put on, but that list right now, because I listen to so much music that comes into my inbox every day, could go on for 50 or 60 bands. I can name a band from every country in Asia that just kills it right now.
What would you recommend as like a primary source for looking and finding new bands that are in the hardcore and punk scene in Asia? Like YouTube, Spotify, like what is the best place to check out?
Well, I'm gonna say Unite Asia, actually.
Oh, there you go.
I would have to say, I think I do a pretty good job with like gathering as much information as I can, and putting it all in one place for you. And then from there, man, dude, from there, like actually, this website is what I wish I had when I was growing up. You know, like I really wish I had access to a website like this to be like, oh, so this band that I love from New York City, there's a band just like that from Kuala Lumpur, or there's a band just like that from Jakarta or Bandung, you know. And so it really is a one-stop shop. But having said that, Asia's so big, I don't get everything. I don't capture all the beauty and all the amazing things that get released every day. So I would start there, and then you just start going off, start connecting with these bands and the labels that we bring up. You know, there's Spotify links all the time and playlists that people put up that goes on, interviews. I've got, you know, we have links to like video production houses who are really, right, you know, like in the back of the day, it used to be zines. That used to be the lifeblood. Right now, I honestly think it's people like you, what you're doing, and like video production, people who go and film live shows are like the lifeblood right now. Where you're like, oh, that band from Bangkok, that's what they're like live, and look at how vibrant their scene is, and you immediately want to know what's going on in Bangkok or what's going on in Taipei or Taichung, you know. And so I think like a lot of these live streaming videos, video production houses, kids just with cameras filming it and editing it, throwing it up on YouTube or whatever, are doing so much for their own communities and their scenes. And then sites like Unite Asia just bring it all together, house it in one place for a lot of people. But like you're saying, it's once you get there, then you just got to start branching off and seeing what you can see.
You know, I'm really excited that you had reached out because, you know, for a really long time, I had sort of observed the way that a lot of Asian music has ported over to the United States. And, you know, over the last, let's say, 10 years, we had that whole K-pop movement that happened in the States where prior to that, no one gave a fuck about Asian people, and after that, suddenly they were all sort of interested. But even now, it's like a lot of people's understanding of Asian music is so limited to, you know, some Japanese pop music, and then K-pop, and then just spatterings of certain bands anywhere else. But that's about it, at least in terms of the United States. But I was, you know, as a Filipino, as someone who it's like, you know, singing and karaoke is such a part of our culture. And I remember always just going online and just like looking at videos of like just some of the best singers who were just like these random Filipino people like singing at a mall or whatever. And I always thought that there was just so much untapped and overlooked potential all throughout Asia. And it wasn't, you know, not to knock the wind out of the sails of K-pop or anything like that, but you know, that is just one scene, and that is also a scene that is heavily funded, whereas some of the independent artists who aren't getting that credit, I mean, those are the real innovators. And I think that we're, you know, for a lot of people in the United States who only focus on these pop scenes, they are missing out so much, which again, I that's why I'm so I have so much admiration for what you do, especially since you have this platform designed to highlight people who would have otherwise never had that opportunity to shine. You know, on our page in the LLAG community, you know, sometimes it's difficult because it's like some of the people that you want to uplift, they might not be as known, or you might not get as much engagement or whatever when you're posting this stuff on social media. But I think at the bottom line, or at the end of the day, there is this gratification that you know that you are helping people out who need that visibility. And whether or not it is the most popular thing or whether or not it's the most viral thing really doesn't matter. I think for us, just getting those people out in the front lines and giving them a spotlight is what matters to you. Now, my last question, what are you currently working on, Riz, and where can we find you?
So right now, I think I'll be doing Unite Asia. Oops, I just literally fell down on my daughter's toys. Hold on. I literally, I've got, what is this? I've got slime all over and Play-Doh on my foot right now. Can I just go back to that earlier thing that you just said, which was so awesome, man? I love the way you said that. You articulated it perfectly. And that is like the heart of Unite Asia. I mean, I'm like, you know, a lot of people write to me and they're like, oh, you know, we're just a brand new band. We just got formed like, you know, a year ago. And this is a song. Is that okay if you put it up? I'm like, hell yeah, man. Let's put it up. Let's get it out there. And like you said, that's all it is, man. It's all about, it's a platform for anybody. So I do get some gigantic bands in the Philippines. Like there's a band called Typecast from Philippines. It's enormous. They're huge. They're like the Jimmy Eat World of Philippines. They're a massive band. Because we have a history, like we've known each other for a long time, they'll send me stuff. So they are also really appreciative that, like not only do I make this a platform for gigantic, highly established bands, but I also give brand new bands a chance. And I'm like, dude, everyone just needs a chance. And that's the beauty of punk rock and hardcore, like a true punk rock and hardcore community. They see the potential in everything. They see the potential in any band that gets on stage, and it kind of like it kind of gets through a song. You're like, yeah, dude, you guys are terrible, but I see it. I feel something there, and I know that we'll keep coming back and keep supporting you. And that's all it is all about, man. At the end of the day, like it's not about trying to get Unite Asia, the name out, or my name out, or my band's name out. It's not that at all. It's by providing this platform for people, just like you said, who are like, what's going on in Karachi? There must be something in Karachi. And they they Google it, and Unite Asia pops up with, like a list of 3 or 4 bands from Karachi that release music. And they're like, what? This is crazy. And it kind of is like back in the day when you pick up a CD or a cassette of a band you love, you're like, I need to find more bands like this. And so you look through the thank you section. You know what I mean? You look through the thank you section, you find a name, you try to search that name, and then you find more things. That slowly this world opens up. And that's all Unite Asia is trying to be. It's trying to be like this kind of like this gateway, these doors, this door that helps you open up to our scene in our community. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, I think.
I mean, like I said, the timing of meeting you is perfect, because I think over the last few months, I had been doing sort of a lot of self-reflection about the music that I've listened to, and I think I started listening to punk, early in the 90s, especially since I grew up, listening to like a lot of pop punk, like Green Day and shit. But so much of what I listened to was just stuff maybe like in a Tony Hawk game, or stuff that was just on MTV. And I think now that I am older, I'm looking for these opportunities to go back and revisit some of these genres that I haven't really taken a deeper look into. And unfortunately, like, for me, it's like my instinct is to be like, okay, I'm going to go to Pitchfork and I'm going to go ahead and see what some of the top bands are. But usually it's like you end up coming across the same bands that are being promoted on these different apps. And so it's like, sometimes you feel like you want something new. And I think that Unite Asia will be a really cool opportunity for me to be able to get into the scene more, but actually do this from the perspective of embracing more independent Asian artists. But again, Riz, I'm so glad that you came on. I would love to have you back on. I think once I discover more bands and check them out, I'll have to have you come back on again.
Dude, love to. I mean, this is such an honor, and I really appreciate all the stuff that you've been doing. I've been a fan for your page for a long time, man. I read through all the stuff, and I love the stances that you've taken on things. And I'm like, this dude is cool. And then like when I think you had written something last week about, I've got this podcast going, if you're interested, and someone had tagged me onto yours, and I was like, oh. I didn't even think about it. They didn't even come across, like, I don't, honestly, and hopefully people who are listening, they don't seem to, like, a lot of Asian people out here in Asia don't ever think that people in the West will care about what we do, our voice, what we have to say. So it doesn't come across our minds. We're like, oh, I could go on this playlist, this podcast. Or it doesn't even cross our mind. We're just like, okay, we're just going to listen to it like we always do, listen and get inspired, do our own thing that no one really cares about except for our community. But then someone tagged me. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy could interview me. I could be over there. Like, that to me it's wild how the internet is just bringing all of us together, and like we're able to do things and prop people up that have never had a chance before. So it's beautiful, man.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited. And like I said, we're definitely gonna keep that same energy. We're definitely gonna go ahead and try to find more artists like yourself who are doing good work. But again, Riz, it's a pleasure. I'll definitely have you back on.
Salamat po.
All right, thanks, Riz. All right, have a nice night, man. All right, take care.
Peace.
Bye.